Well, folks, welcome back to another video right here on Jason's Wrestling Channel. I have to do a remake of this video because I didn't like the way it turned out the first time. I'm going to be talking about Elizabeth Ann Hewlett, otherwise known as Miss Elizabeth, from the WWF and WCW. Now, she started out as a manager of the Macho Man Randy Savage, and her and Savage were married in real life as well. Savage was in the ring, and there's a lot of people that wanted to manage him. But he didn't want them. He didn't want Bobby the Brain Heenan. He didn't want Slick, and he didn't want Classy Freddie Blasty as his manager. So he brought Elizabeth out as his manager, and she managed him throughout the 1980s and part of the 90s. She stood in his corner. Now, Savage was very jealous when it came to Elizabeth as well. He didn't want her in the back talking to any of the other guys that were back there. He would lock her in the dressing room and go off and do interviews at times, and he would come out and let her out according to what some of the other talent said. He was very protective of her. And then in 1988, he was a tag team with Hulk Hogan, and they formed the Mega Powers. And Hogan thought of Elizabeth as a sister. There are times Savage had no problem with it, and there's times he did. It got to a point to where one time they won at SummerSlam '88. Elizabeth got up on the canvas and she tore her skirt off, and she had red underwear on underneath her skirt. And it distracted Ted DiBiase and Andre the Giant, allowing Hogan and Savage to pick up the win. And then towards the end, Hogan was so happy that they won the match, he picked her up and was going around in circles because he hugged her. Savage saw this and he didn't like it too much. You could tell him look on his face. He didn't do anything, but he looked and kind of had this look on his face like he wasn't happy. And then at a Saturday's night main event, they were wrestling the Big Boss Man and Akeem. Savage got thrown through the ropes and landed right on top of Elizabeth. And Hogan picked her up and took her to the back to receive medical attention. Savage was looking around all over, couldn't find Hogan to tag him. And then he looks towards the entranceway and he sees Hogan carrying Elizabeth to the back to receive medical attention. So Savage saw this and he didn't like it. And then he got attacked by the Big Boss Man and Akeem, and he had to stay there at ringside to wrestle two guys, and he got his butt kicked. And then he ended up losing the match. And then he went to the back to confront Hogan. Hogan was in the back with Elizabeth getting medical attention. Savage comes and he's like, I turned my back to you and you want to come at me man to man for a belt? He goes, I'll beat you 1, 2, 3. Hogan goes, Elizabeth, try and talk some sense to this guy. Try and talk some sense to this guy. And she says, I don't know if I can. And so Savage takes the belt, hits Hogan in the head. Savage goes, big time, huh? Big time. And he's beating Hogan up. So then that brings WrestleMania 5. Elizabeth had to choose what corner she was going to be in, Hogan or Savage. she couldn't make up her mind as to whose corner she wanted to be in because she managed both guys. So she was in a neutral corner. And it means like a neutral corner is where she's just in a corner by herself, basically. And during the match, she was trying to help both guys as they got thrown out of the ring or trying to help them back into the ring. Savage was distracted by it. The referee comes outside and he said to Savage, "You get in there." And he said to Elizabeth, "You leave the ring area." So she left the ring area. And then it was Hogan and Savage. And then Hogan ended up beating Savage for the World Wrestling Federation title. And then after that, Macho Man Randy Savage got Sensational Sherry to be his new manager. And Elizabeth was managing Hogan for a while. And then eventually Elizabeth split. And then she came back at SummerSlam 1989 to be in the corner of Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake. And it was Hogan and Zeus with Sherry in Savage's corner, and Savage and Zeus's corner, and Hogan and Brutus with Elizabeth in their corner. And then Hogan and Brutus ended up beating Savage and Zeus at SummerSlam 1989. And then you didn't see Elizabeth for quite a while. In 1991 at SummerSlam, I believe that was the next time you saw her, she had come back, and her and Savage got married at SummerSlam 91. And then it was like a wedding for the fans, basically. But they were married way before that. They just did that for the fans. They stayed together for a while. She managed them. He did a feud with Jake the Snake Roberts. Roberts was like this heel character. And then Savage ended up beating Jake the Snake. And you didn't see too much of her after that. Savage became an announcer after they did the feud with Jake the Snake Roberts because she was out of the business. She left him because he was too protective of her and she couldn't stand being around him. So she was out of the wrestling scene for quite a few years, and Savage didn't like the idea of being an announcer. So then eventually he quit the WWF and he went to WCW. I guess Hogan got him a contract with Eric Bischoff. And he was wrestling solo for a while. And then they brought Elizabeth back into the fold. Savage wanted her as his manager again, so then he got her a contract in WCW. And she managed Hogan and Savage in WCW because they reformed the Mega Powers for a while. And then eventually she turned on on Savage at a pay-per-view. It was Ric Flair and Savage with Elizabeth in Macho Man's corner and Woman in Flair's corner. She took her shoe off at one of the pay-per-views, gave it to Flair, and Savage got hit right in the face. And then she went with Ric Flair for a while, and she was part of the Four Horsemen. And then Hogan would eventually form the NWO, to where Elizabeth was forced to join the NWO. She didn't want to join it, but she was forced to join it. And then Hogan and Savage had a feud in 1996 at Halloween Havoc that went for a little while. And then they had their match at Halloween Havoc, and then she would come down and she would be like protecting him. And then she would leave the ring. And she was part of the NWO. And eventually, well, you didn't see Savage for a while after this match at Halloween Havoc. And then eventually he became a heel, and he himself joined the NWO. And then Elizabeth started managing him again in WCW, as in the NWO, because she was the NWO, she was managing other people in the NWO. And then she didn't mind being in it because Savage was in the NWO. And she just became part of that group until that group broke up. Eventually the NWO broke up. Macho Man he left the wrestling business, I think. And then she started working with Lex Luger. There was a guy named Vince Russo that came into WCW, and he was working backstage with WCW. Him and Ed Ferrara came in, and he wanted Elizabeth to be part of the show. So he put Elizabeth with Lex. And at first Lex was like, no, he goes, I don't feel comfortable working with her because, she was Randy Savage's girl. But they had no choice. They had to work together. She wanted to work with him. And then Savage came back with the blonde-haired girl. And then he asked Savage backstage if it was okay if he had Elizabeth come to ringside with him. Savage goes, yeah. He goes, we've been done for a long time. You got my blessing. So then Luger had his blessing. So then she came to the ring with Luger. And then they start dating. Luger was cheating on his wife with Elizabeth. WCW eventually folded. It went out of business. And then she was living with Lex Luger at Lex Luger's home. Well, Lex Luger had another home away from his wife, so him and Elizabeth can get together. And then they start living together. And Luger used to take like all kinds of drugs, like bodybuilding drugs and steroids and stuff, painkillers, just to keep his build, to keep the muscles that he had, his physique, And she got taking the pills. She was taking painkillers for her back. There was a domestic disturbance at Luger's house in 2003. She says, a neighbor said that Luger was beating her up. She said she fell walking the dogs because she had a black eye and a cut up over her eye. And then one day Lex Luger left his home with his kid, and she was there. And Luger came back, and she wasn't feeling good. And they were eating food. He was heating up her food, and she started leaning over. He couldn't believe what was going on. And she was taking painkillers and mixing vodka and tequila together and taking these pills. And the medicine mixed together, and she OD'd on it. But Lex Luger did call 911, but he didn't know what to do. He said, I'm scared to death. I don't know what to do. This 911 operator said, if she's not breathing, you got to help her breathe. Luger goes, I don't think that I can. I'm scared to death. And they're like, sir, if she's not breathing, you got to help her breathe. And he's like, I don't think that she is. So then the paramedics came, and she died on arrival to the hospital. Now, a lot of this could have been avoided. I think she still could have been here if she didn't get involved in drugs with Lex Luger. I feel it's Luger's fault. If it wasn't for him giving her those drugs, she would probably still be here today. And a lot of fans are not happy of the fact that she's not, because she should be here. And Luger should be ashamed of himself for even getting her involved in this stuff. And that's just my opinion. A lot of people have their own opinions on this. You know what you did, Luger. You should face up and admit that it's your fault. Because it's a horrible thing that happened. I mean, I was a fan of her and Macho Man. I'm also saddened about the Macho Man's death, too. But he had a heart attack, you know. But Elizabeth died of a drug overdose because of Lex Luger. Anyways, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. And if you like karaoke, subscribe to Flash Gordon Karaoke Channel 5000. And have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching this remake of this video. There are some information that I forgot before to give you, so I had to take that video down. And if I missed anything, please put it in the comment section. And have a good day. Thank you.